When I think back on that night, I still can't believe how quickly everything changed. 1 second, I was microwaving leftover lasagna and minding my own business, and the next he kissed me. And he was my sister's boyfriend. Let me rewind a bit. My name's Jason. I'm 23, and I just moved back into my parents' house for a few weeks after finishing grad school. My sister Nicole still lived at home, working her first real job while saving for her own place. It wasn't supposed to be a long stay, just a pit stop before I figured out my next move. And then there was Zach. Zach was Nicole's boyfriend. They'd been together for almost a year. He wasn't the type one imagined her with. He was quieter, laid back, one of those guys who always seemed like he was thinking deeply about something, even when he was just watching a rerun of Friends. He had this messy brown hair, strong arms from his job in construction, and a smile that was, well, a little too charming for his own good. I'd met him a few times when I visited home. Always polite, always just a little reserved. I never thought much of it until I moved back in and started seeing him more often, on the couch, in the kitchen, picking her up from work, dropping by with food. He wasn't loud or showy, but he was consistent, the kind of guy who brings your mom flowers and washes his plate after dinner. I tried not to pay attention to him. I really did. But it's hard to ignore someone when you keep catching them watching you. At first, I thought I was imagining it. A glance too long. A question that felt just a little too personal. Then, there were the moments when Nicole left the room and Zach would stay behind, his eyes lingering on me in a way that didn't feel brotherly. But I pushed those thoughts down. Hard. Because that's not how this works. He was dating my sister, and even if he wasn't, he was straight, right? Then came the night that flipped everything upside down. Nicole had to go to a friend's bachelorette weekend. 3 days in Napa. Wine and spa stuff, the whole deal. She left Friday morning. That night, I figured I'd have the house to myself. I was halfway through heating dinner when the front door opened, and in walked Zach, holding a bag of groceries. "Oh," I said, pausing with a fork in one hand. "Hey," he replied, looking almost sheepish. "Nicole asked me to feed the cat while she's gone." I raised an eyebrow. She never mentioned that. He set the bag on the counter and pulled out a few cans of food. "She probably forgot. Said you'd be around, but didn't want to bug you." "Right." He glanced at the microwave, then at the plate in my hand. "Lasagna?" "Leftovers. You want some?" Zach hesitated for a second, then shrugged. "Sure." We ended up eating together at the kitchen table. It was quiet for a bit, the only sound coming from the clink of our forks and the hum of the fridge. Then, out of nowhere, he asked, "You dating anyone?" I blinked. No, not right now." He nodded like that confirmed something. "Didn't think so." I waited, expecting a follow-up, but he just went back to eating like it was the most casual question in the world. After dinner, I started cleaning up while he refilled the cat's bowl. "She talks about you a lot, you know," he said over his shoulder. "Nicole?" "Yeah, always saying how smart you are, how she wishes you'd move back for good." I chuckled, rinsing off a plate. "She has a weird way of showing it. We fight like we're 12. Zach smiled at that, and for a moment, everything felt normal again. Until he didn't leave. "You want to watch something?" he asked, already heading toward the living room. I hesitated. I should have said I had stuff to do, that I was tired, that he should go. But instead, I followed him. We ended up watching a movie. I don't even remember which one. He sat close, not right next to me, but closer than a normal boyfriend of your sister should. At one point, our knees brushed, and I swear neither of us moved. Then the movie ended. The credits rolled. And I stood to stretch, ready to break the tension and call it a night. But Zach stood too, and when I turned to grab my phone, he stepped in front of me, just a little too close. "Hey," he said, his voice lower now. "Can I ask you something?" My chest tightened. "Yeah?" He looked at me, really looked at me. "Do you think about me?" I felt my stomach drop. "What?" He exhaled, rubbed the back of his neck like he was frustrated with himself. "Forget it. That was stupid. I don't know why I..." And then, before I could say anything, before I could even breathe, he leaned in and kissed me. His lips touched mine. soft, tentative, almost like he was afraid I'd shove him away. And honestly, I should have. I should have pushed him back, told him to get the hell out, reminded him that he was my sister's boyfriend. But I didn't. I froze, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My hands were half raised, like I couldn't decide whether to pull him closer or push him off. He pulled back first, just an inch, eyes searching mine. "I'm sorry," he whispered, but he didn't look sorry. He looked scared. And maybe a little relieved. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. "I don't know," he said. I've been thinking about this. About you. And I know it's wrong, but I couldn't stop." I stared at him, brain still lagging behind what had just happened. "Zach, Nicole's my sister." "I know. She's your girlfriend." "I know that too," he said, looking down like he couldn't face me anymore. "But it's not just some impulsive thing. It's been there. For a while." I took a step back, suddenly needing space. I felt like the floor was tilting beneath me. "You're not gay." "I don't know what I am," he said quickly. "I just know I feel something when I'm around you, and it's not something I can ignore anymore." I sat down, needing to anchor myself to something solid. The couch cushions felt too soft, like they couldn't hold the weight of what was happening. "So what? This is just some phase? Curiosity?" Zach ran a hand through his hair, then sat down too. Not too close this time. "It's not about curiosity. I'm not experimenting. This isn't about a chillin'. It's about you." My mouth opened, then closed again. I didn't know how to respond. The weird thing was, part of me had always wondered, not about Zach specifically, but about whether someone like him, straight, steady, solid, could ever feel something for someone like me. I never expected the answer to be yes. "I get it if you're pissed," he said, still not looking at me. I crossed a line, but I couldn't go another day pretending like I didn't feel this. I studied him, really studied him. His shoulders were tense, his hands clenched in his lap. This wasn't a joke or some weird dare. He meant it. Every word. The worst part? I didn't hate it. I'd noticed him before. That wasn't a secret. Not to myself, anyway. I'd caught myself watching the way his shirt clung to his back when he bent over, the way his voice dropped when he was tired, the way he smiled when he wasn't trying to impress anyone. But I never let it go further than that, because it couldn't. "Zach." I started, but he stood up. "I should go," he said quickly. "Forget this happened. It was a mistake." And just like that, he was walking to the door. But before he reached it, I said, "It didn't feel like a mistake." He stopped, turned around slowly, and I could see it. The hope creeping into his expression like he was afraid to believe it. I stood too, nervous energy bouncing around my chest. I'm not saying I know what to do here, but I'm not going to lie and say it meant nothing. Zach stepped closer again, slower this time. "So what now?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but you can't keep dating my sister. Not if this is real." He looked at me for a long time, then nodded. "I know." Silence hung between us for a moment. Then he took a breath. "I'll tell her," he said. "Are you sure?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "I have to. I care about her, but not the way I thought I did. Not the way I care about you." I didn't know what to say. My throat felt tight, like my body hadn't caught up to everything that had happened. He reached out, hesitated, then let his hand fall again. "I won't kiss you again. Not until it's done." I nodded. "Okay." He walked out after that, quietly, like he was afraid the walls might rat him out. And I was left standing in the living room, the taste of his lips still on mine, wondering how in the hell I got here. Zach didn't text me that night. Or the next day. I didn't reach out either. I kept checking my phone like a dumb reflex. But deep down, I knew it had to be him who made the next move. He was the one with the girlfriend. the one who had to burn something down before anything new could begin. Still, the waiting was brutal. By Sunday night, I was pacing around the kitchen, half-eaten cereal in front of me, wondering if I'd completely hallucinated the whole thing. Maybe I'd read too much into that kiss. Maybe the guilt had already made him retreat into denial, and I'd never hear from him again. Then I got the text. Talk to her. Just that. No emojis, no explanation. My heart dropped. Are you okay? I replied, fingers trembling. It took 5 minutes for the typing dots to appear. Not really. She's pissed. Hurt. But I didn't lie. I told her it wasn't just some fling, that it was about you. I didn't even know how to respond to that. My fingers hovered over the screen, and I typed a few things before deleting them. He followed up a moment later. Can I come over? I stared at the message for a long time before I finally sent back, yeah. 10 minutes later, I heard the knock on the front door. I opened it to find Zach standing there in a hoodie, looking like he hadn't slept. His eyes were red, but he didn't look broken, just raw. I stepped aside to let him in. Neither of us said anything for a moment. The silence was thick, but not awkward. It felt like a held breath. She cried, he said, finally, as we sat on opposite ends of the couch. I nodded. I figured. I didn't want to hurt her, he added, like he needed to say it out loud. But it felt worse lying. I know, I said quietly. We sat there for a while in that weird in-between space, where something massive had already happened, but we hadn't caught up emotionally yet. She asked if I was gay, he said suddenly. I told her I don't know. I've never felt this way about anyone else before. I glanced over at him. And what is this exactly? Zach looked at me then. Really looked. It's not just a crush, if that's what you're asking. It's not curiosity or boredom or me being confused. He leaned in slightly. It's you. That hit harder than I expected. There was a finality to the way he said it, like he'd come to the end of a very long road and found me standing there. I swallowed hard. So what now? Zach exhaled. Now I figure out how to live with everyone probably hating me for a while. They won't hate you forever. I hurt Nicole. Yeah, I said. But you also did the right thing. He nodded slowly. I couldn't keep pretending. Not when all I wanted to do was be here. He shifted closer. With you. His hand brushed mine, tentative, waiting for permission. This time, I didn't pull away. You really sure about this? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me like he'd already asked himself that question 1,000 times. I've never been more sure of anything. Then he kissed me again. This time, it wasn't a question. It wasn't an accident. It was intentional, slow and warm in a way that made my chest ache. And I kissed him back. When we finally broke apart, our foreheads rested together, both of us breathing like we'd just run a marathon. You staying tonight? I asked, half joking. Not if that makes you uncomfortable. It doesn't. Then yeah, he said, if you want me to. I nodded, lips curving slightly. I do. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Not even close. There was fallout ahead, conversations to be had, judgments we'd have to live with. But in that moment, it didn't matter. Because he chose me, that night was quiet. Zach stayed over, but it wasn't like the stuff you see in movies. No dramatic music, no clothes flying, no sudden fiery passion. We didn't even make out again after that kiss on the couch. We just existed, together. He borrowed a pair of my sweatpants, and we lay side by side on my bed, both of us on our backs, not touching at first. Just breathing in sync, the dark room wrapped around us like a blanket we didn't ask for but needed. You okay? I asked after a long silence. Yeah, he whispered. You? Not sure, I admitted. Feels like I'm holding my breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. He turned his head toward me. I get that. I looked at him in the low light, his profile against the glow from the street lamp outside the window. His jawline, the way his chest rose and fell, slow and steady. The vulnerability in his expression. I hadn't seen him like this before. No walls, no performance, just him. I thought about this, he said, more than I should have. Wondered what it would feel like. To be here, next to you, like this. You didn't act like it. I couldn't, he replied, his voice quiet. I was too busy convincing myself I didn't want to. And now? He swallowed. Now I don't want to lie anymore. To myself. Or anyone else. I rolled onto my side, facing him. I'm not looking for something casual, Zach met my eyes. Neither am I. That was it. We didn't need to map out the rest of our lives that night. We didn't need to figure out labels or answers or plans. We just needed honesty. And for the first time since he kissed me, I let myself believe this might actually be real. The next few days were weird. Nicole didn't come home until Tuesday afternoon. I wasn't there when she arrived. Zach and I had agreed it was best if I gave her space. She texted me that evening, short and clipped. I need time. Please respect that. I told her I would, and I meant it. The guilt hid me in waves. Zach never talked badly about her, not once. If anything, he blamed himself more than he needed to. But I saw it, how heavy it sat on him, how every time he looked at me, part of him still thought he didn't deserve this. We kept our distance from each other during the day. No secret meetings, no sneaking around. We texted a lot, and when we did see each other, it was always honest, open, cautious. We were taking it slow. Until Friday night. It was raining. One of those sudden October storms that made the air feel colder than it should have. I was curled up on the couch in the living room with a hoodie and a blanket when the doorbell rang. I knew it was him before I even got up. When I opened the door, Zach stood there with a soaked hoodie and a bag of takeout. I brought Ty, he said, holding it up like a peace offering. I stepped aside, biting back a smile. You know that's the way to my heart, right? It's either this or I start learning how to cook, he said, kicking off his shoes. You trying to impress me? Too late, he replied casually, setting the food down. You're already impressed. We ate on the couch, legs stretched out, the occasional brush of our knees under the table. It felt domestic. Comfortable. After we cleaned up, we stayed on the couch, the storm outside, wrapping around the house like background noise. He looked at me, serious now. Do you regret it? I didn't need to ask what he meant. No, I said. Not for a second. Do you? He shook his head. I think I just regret not being honest sooner. He reached for my hand then, fingers brushing mine before curling around them. And I let him. That night, he stayed again. And this time, we didn't sleep on opposite sides of the bed. The first time we really slept together, actually shared a bed, and didn't just lie there pretending not to touch, it was surprisingly quiet. No big declarations, no rushed passion, just slow movement, nervous laughter, and moments where we both stopped and stared at each other, like we were making sure it was really happening. Zach kept checking my face like he was waiting for me to back out, and I kept doing the same to him. But we didn't back out. At one point, he leaned over me, one hand beside my head on the pillow, and said softly, You good? I nodded. You? He kissed me instead of answering, and that said enough. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward pauses, moments where our hands fumbled, or we laughed because one of us got a cramp, or someone's elbow ended up in the wrong place. But that made it better. It was real, it was careful, mutual, wanted. When it was over, we just lay there, tangled up and quiet, our bodies still warm, my hand resting on his chest where I could feel his heartbeat slowing. This feels like a dream, he said, not looking at me. I know, I whispered. He turned his head, met my eyes. You're not a rebound. I know that too, I said, without hesitation. And I believed it. I really did. Over the next couple of weeks, things got complicated. Zach had officially broken up with Nicole, but it wasn't clean. She wasn't screaming or throwing things, but the silence was worse. She was avoiding me, which hurt more than I wanted to admit. We had always been close. Maybe not tell each other everything close, but close enough to borrow clothes or vent about work or roast each other's Spotify playlists. Now, I'd come downstairs and hear her room door click shut. She barely looked at me at dinner. And the one time we were alone in the kitchen, she just said, "You could have told me," and walked out. Zach didn't try to push it. He respected her space, even though it clearly weighed on him. "Maybe we shouldn't hang out at the house," he said one night, fidgeting with his keys outside his truck. "It's my house too," I replied. "You don't have to disappear." "Yeah, but I don't want her thinking we're rubbing it in her face. I don't want her to hate you. She's not gonna hate me forever." "I'm not so sure," he said quietly. "This is a lot." I nodded. "Yeah, it is." We stood there for a beat too long before I said, "You want to go somewhere?" He smirked. "Like a real date?" "Yeah, like sit in a booth and make awkward eye contact date," Zach chuckled. "God help me, I think I want that." That weekend, we drove out to a diner about 30 minutes away, one of those old ones with cracked vinyl booths and syrup dispensers that haven't been washed properly since 2007. But it was perfect. We sat across from each other, pretending not to notice when people looked a little too long. Zach kept tapping his fingers nervously on the table, and I caught him checking his reflection in the window more than once. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, but then said, "This is the first time I've ever done this." "Gone to a diner?" He gave me a look. "Gone out with a guy. In public." "Oh. Feels good," he added quickly. "Just new." I smiled, trying not to show how much that meant. "You're doing great." He smiled back, sheepish. "I feel like everyone's staring." "Let them." We ate burgers and shared fries, and when the check came, he grabbed it before I could even reach. "You don't have to." "I want to," he said. "First date, right? Let me do this." "All right," I said, grinning, "but I'm driving next time." He raised an eyebrow. "Next time, huh?" I shrugged. "I mean, unless this is a one-time deal." He leaned forward, playful but serious. "Not a chance." Back at my house later that night, Nicole wasn't home. I assumed she was out with friends, or maybe just didn't want to be around me. Either way, the house was quiet when we walked in. Zach looked at me. "Want to stay in the living room or—" I shook my head. "Come upstairs." So we did. We lay on my bed fully clothed, heads resting on the same pillow, his hand tucked under mine like it belonged there. We watched dumb YouTube videos, laughed about nothing, kissed once, then twice, then not at all. We just held each other. And somewhere in between the silence and the softness, he whispered, "I didn't think I'd ever be this happy." I looked at him, stunned. "You're happy?" He nodded. "Scared. But yeah, I am." I smiled. "Me too." And I meant it. By the time November rolled around, the air had that sharp chill that made you want to stay under the covers all day. Zach and I were still figuring it out. Quietly, cautiously. We weren't making it Instagram official or anything, but people were starting to notice, and not just my sister. My mom asked first, casually, like she was just making conversation. "You and Zach hang out a lot, huh?" I looked up from my cereal. "Yeah." She nodded slowly. "You two always seem to get along." I waited for the rest of the sentence, but it didn't come. Just a sip of coffee and a slight twitch at the corner of her mouth, like she already knew everything but didn't want to push. Dad didn't say anything. But the second time Zach came over to pick me up, he opened the door, looked Zach dead in the eye, and said, "You treating my son right?" Zach, bless him, didn't even flinch. "Yes, sir. Always." Dad just nodded once and went back to watching his game. So, yeah, they knew. The only one who hadn't acknowledged it yet was Nicole. It happened a couple weeks before Thanksgiving. I came home late. Zach had dropped me off after grabbing tacos and seeing a movie, and Nicole was in the kitchen, sitting at the table, scrolling through her phone like she wasn't waiting for me. I stood there for a second, unsure if I should just keep walking or say something. She looked up. "We should talk." I nodded and sat down across from her. For a minute, she didn't say anything, just looked at me, her eyes darker than usual. Not angry exactly, just tired. "How long?" she asked. I swallowed. "Since the night you went to Napa." Her lips tightened. "So what happened while we were together?" "No," I said quickly. He kissed me, yeah, but he ended it with you before anything else happened. I swear. She leaned back, crossing her arms. You think that makes it better? No, I admitted. But it's the truth. She stared at me for a long moment. Then, do you love him? I blinked. What? She tilted her head slightly, voice flat. Do you love him? I hesitated. I don't know yet, but maybe, yeah. She nodded like she expected that answer. I was never gonna marry him, you know? I looked up. He was sweet, but it wasn't deep. It never got there. Maybe it could have. Maybe not. But I always felt like there was something he wasn't saying. Now I know what it was. I didn't speak. She sighed, rubbing her hands over her face. It just sucks, okay? It sucks that it was you. My own brother. I didn't plan it. I know, but still. Silence again. Heavier this time. Then she said, just don't lie to me anymore. Don't sneak around. And maybe don't kiss in the kitchen while I'm trying to eat breakfast. That caught me off guard. Wait, are you saying you're okay with it? She met my eyes. I'm saying I'll get there. I blinked, unsure if I was imagining it. Then she stood, grabbed her water glass, and muttered, and for the record, he was a terrible cuddler. I snorted despite myself. And, just like that, something broke. Not fully. Not cleanly. But enough. 2 nights later, I told Zach what she said. He sat back on my bed, eyes wide. She actually said that? Yeah, he shook his head. I don't deserve her forgiveness. Probably not, I said, but she's still giving it. Slowly. Zach looked down at his hands. What if this doesn't work? What if we ruin everything and lose everyone in the process? I moved to sit beside him, our shoulders touching. We're not ruining anything, I said. We're just finally being honest. He nodded, slowly. Still scared. Me too, I admitted. He looked at me, but also kind of excited. I smiled. Yeah, that part too. Then I kissed him. Not because we needed to, not because we were trying to prove something, just because it felt right. Because I wanted to. Because he did too. Thanksgiving came faster than I expected. Mom insisted on doing a full dinner, turkey, stuffing, the works, even though there were only 5 of us this year. My aunt canceled last minute, and my older cousin bailed for some Friendsgiving thing. That left me, Mom, Dad, Nicole, and Zach. Yes, he came. And, yes, Nicole knew. When I asked her if it was okay, she hesitated for about 3 full seconds, then said, he always carved the turkey better than Dad anyway. Might as well make himself useful. That was her version of a blessing. So Zach came. He brought a bottle of wine and wore a button-down that made him look slightly more grown-up than usual. He greeted everyone with a quiet smile, gave Nicole a polite nod, and shook my dad's hand like they were in on some kind of private truce. The whole thing felt weird, but not bad. Just new. And when we sat down to eat and my mom insisted we all say something we were grateful for, Zach cleared his throat and looked right at me. I'm grateful, he said, for second chances and for people who don't give up on you. My chest tightened. Nicole rolled her eyes, but even she didn't look annoyed, just tired of the emotional tension. Jesus, just kiss already. My fork clinked against my plate. Zach went red. I tried not to choke on my wine, but she just smirked. I'm kidding. Sort of. We all laughed. Even Dad. It was the first time everything felt okay. Really okay. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Zach and I ended up outside, sitting on the porch swing with a shared blanket over our laps. The cold bit at our cheeks, but neither of us wanted to go back in. Do you remember the first time you met me? I asked, leaning my head against the wooden post. Zach chuckled. Yeah, you were wearing that stupid blue hoodie with the hole in the sleeve. I laughed. You complimented it. I lied. We both grinned into the cold night air. Seriously, though, I said after a pause. Did you ever think it would end up like this? He shook his head slowly. Not in a million years. But you're glad it did? Zach turned toward me, his eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. Yeah, I am. He reached for my hand under the blanket, fingers interlacing with mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. I still don't know what to call this, he said quietly. Us. You don't have to call it anything yet, I replied. It just has to feel right. And it does, I nodded. Me too. We sat like that for a while, listening to the wind move through the trees, the hum of distant traffic, the faint clink of dishes being washed through the open kitchen window. It wasn't dramatic or intense or fireworks in the sky kind of love. It was quieter, softer. The kind of love that creeps in when you're not looking and makes a home before you even realize it. The kind of love that's scary because it means something, because it might last. A few weeks later, we were back on that same porch swing, Zach and I, wrapped up in the same shared blanket, our breath hanging in the winter air like smoke. December had crept in fast. The town was already strung up with Christmas lights, radio stations were going full Mariah, and every store window was pushing hot cocoa and holiday deals. It had been nearly 2 months since that first kiss. 2 months since my sister left for a weekend and came back to find her world upside down. And weirdly, we were all still standing. Zach wasn't a secret anymore. We weren't flaunting it, but we also weren't pretending. He came around for dinner, sat beside me on the couch, and occasionally even held my hand when no one was looking. Nicole rolled her eyes, but the sharpness had dulled. There was even a night when she joked that if he broke my heart, she'd break his face. He laughed. I didn't. But it felt like family again. Just different. Better, maybe. One night in mid-December, we drove up to the Overlook just outside town, a place where you could see the lights spread out for miles. We sat on the hood of his truck, sipping bad gas station coffee, our shoulders brushing, neither of us talking much. Then he said, "You scare the shit out of me." I turned. What? Zach stared straight ahead at the horizon. You make me want things I never let myself think about. A future. Something real. I didn't say anything right away, just watched his profile as the wind played with his hair. You're not the only one, I finally said. He looked at me then. Really looked. His eyes weren't scared anymore, just full. I love you, he said. It wasn't planned. It wasn't polished. He didn't dress it up or wait for the perfect moment. He just said it. And I felt everything stop, then start again. Stronger. I love you too, I said. Because I did. Because after all the chaos and the guilt and the slow, painful honesty, it was true. I loved him. Zach smiled, that half-crooked grin he always tried to hide when he was nervous. Then he leaned in and kissed me, gentle and sure, like he finally wasn't afraid to mean it. And under the stars, with the whole town stretched out below us, I knew we were going to be okay. No secrets, no pretending, just us. Messy, complicated, real.